Hi, and welcome to the Flex with Aaliyah. Today, I have special guest Julie Phy joining me. She is race director and owner of Phoenix Race. Her and her husband just hosted and put on the 2024 USA National Championships this year in Dalton, Georgia. Thank you so much, Julie, for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about the lead up to the race because a lot was happening. You had several hurricanes hit, coordination with the USA OCR committee. Tell me a little bit about that.
I think that we started the planning back in April, and the USA OCR National Championship Committee met at least once a month. At least twice a month. And leading up to the event, we were meeting more like once a week. Just going over, the race brands that we wanted to include and invite, and putting together the racers experience. Obviously, Phoenix Race was founded on the principle of inclusion and a racer experience. So knowing that this was going to be the first ever para adaptive competitive heat was huge for us moving into the decision making process of whether or not to host the event and take the risk of hosting the event. So, as you mentioned, hurricanes. Yeah, we had a couple of those. One hitting the venue area. We had a little bit of damage due to Hurricane Helene. I won't say a little bit, I'll say a lot of damage at the venue due to Hurricane Helene, which sadly blocked a lot of the access roads. And the amazing county that we hosted in works effortlessly and tirelessly to be able to gain access to all of the areas that we needed to run on. However, there were quite a few that we were not able to gain access to leading up to the event. And then, of course, on the event week, we got slammed with another hurricane, which the weather itself didn't affect the venue, but I think it affected a lot of other things, such as the delivery of the finisher shirts. I don't think a lot of people realize that those customized jerseys were in Cincinnati on Friday. So that was a challenge. Hildervat race was coming up. They were in the midst of that hurricane. We were unsure if they were going to be able to make it. Even 48 hours before the race, they were still trying to figure out how to get out of town and get up here. So in true obstacle course racing fashion, there were a lot of obstacles to overcome. However, I think at the end of the day, we were able to do that and had a great racer experience in the end.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And of course, why not the obstacle course racing fashion? Because that's what we're all about. And you're very familiar with getting hit sometimes with unforeseen and sometimes predictable obstacles, but you guys definitely took it upon yourselves and conquered that because you were able to put on a race, which is sometimes the hardest part, just actually getting it together. And tell me about some of the races you had bring obstacles. I know there was Hildervat, there was Ninja Tech, but tell me a little bit about who else was there and maybe what they actually brought.
Yeah, so we had, like you mentioned Hildervat, they did our finisher rig. It was a 60-foot long rig with cargo nets, ropes, rings, a variety of Spider-Man type things. We had Mythic Race. Bill Shell came in and brought his Ragnarok obstacle, I believe it is. It's the one where you hold with the axes. So it was really cool for a Kansas brand to come in or a Midwest brand to come in, and people from all over the world all over the US to be able to experience the other brands. Emerald Coast Mud Run had a rig as well. The Warrior Tech that you mentioned, they showed up in big fashion and had a band taker. That was probably our number one band taker right there was that specific rig, which we called Dillagas, short for "Do I look like I give a?" So, and it was adequately named for the band taker that it was. And we definitely couldn't have done it without all of those race brands. Bear Crawl came in with a low rig and heavy carry. Just all of the brands coming together to create this event is almost reminiscent of what OCRWC used to be years and years ago, when it was so many different brands coming together and providing a true national championship event rather than, being all one brand.
Yeah, it is cool when they come together. It just makes the most epic event ever because you have the different styles of obstacles that set all the races apart. And that's always so fun, which is why people, like you said, really liked and loved the OCRWC, the OCR World Championships.
Yeah.
Were there any races that you guys reached out to that didn't or wouldn't assist in providing an obstacle, or did all the ones that you guys talked to provide a helping hand?
There were plenty that we reached out to that were unable to provide a helping hand. Savage was planning on being there and then had an insurance issue. Well, so they were unable to come. We had several that were planning to come, but either transportation of the obstacle was an issue, or the weather was an issue as well for a couple of people coming up from Florida. So we did have some people tell us no, totally acceptable. I understand that, especially, a smaller race brand, and it's a little expensive to transport your product across the country, or even several hours away. A lot of brands aren't quite as mobile as we are, or Savages, or Spartan is. We did reach out to Spartan and DECA. DECA very much so tried to be a part of this. It just was too much of a conflict on their schedule. So the DECA brands definitely tried to be a huge part, but just staffing issues, it didn't work out. So yeah, I mean, there were people that said no, but obviously the ones that said yes were here, and we were so glad they were here, and we were able to provide some hotel rooms for them to cut down the cost and that kind of thing.
Well, that's super cool. And that speaks volumes to Shell, who came all the way from Missouri. That's Mythic Race, and hauling his obstacle down, because that's definitely quite a drive. I know from here, which is PA, that's like 16 hours. Not that I've driven there before or anything, but that's definitely a hike for him. So that's really awesome that he wanted to bring his brand there to be a part of it. And it's cool to hear that there were brands willing to participate, even though it ended up not happening, for whatever reason.
Right, right. Everybody that came was over a 6-hour drive. So, for all of the brands coming in and bringing an obstacle, it was a major project on their part and commitment. And we couldn't have done it without them, though, honestly. We have a lot of obstacles, but we don't have enough obstacles to do a 15K. And sadly, the runners that did the 15K will know, and we explained this at the start line, there was not enough obstacles on the 15K, or what we would have liked to have had on the 15K. I think there was 17 obstacles, but we would definitely have liked to have had more, but we didn't have access to so much of the trail due to the hurricane. So putting more obstacles out was not an option, more large obstacles. We could have thrown in more heavy carries, but after you go in and do so many heavy carries and go over so many walls, it's redundant. Nobody wants to do that over and over again. So it was our judgment to leave that a running portion rather than throw in an additional heavy carry or an additional 4-foot wall, which is about all we could even get to the location.
Yeah, sounds like you guys did what you could with what you guys were provided, and there are some things that are out of your control.
100%. And the hurricane was out of our control. There was a lot that was out of our control, sadly. But like you said, we've faced this before. We've shown up on race morning with our course completely underwater. So you never know. It's the racing world, and you just got to overcome, adapt, and keep going. And hopefully, it doesn't affect the racers, and they come out with a good experience.
And I think a lot of people don't know what you do as a race director because this event actually is hosted by USA OCR, which is a different organization than you, and you were in charge of directing it. So, can you explain the difference?
Yeah, so it definitely is. This was a race that was built, financed, produced 100% by Phoenix Race. It was sanctioned by USA OCR. So what that means is that USA OCR provided the sanctioning rules that we needed to follow in order for this to be a qualification event and national championship for Team 2025. So the people that podiumed at this Phoenix race slash national championship race will go on to be in Team 2025 for USA OCR. So they are the governing body of the sport in our nation. So they sanction the race as far as building, laying out the course, coordinating with all the other races. Jason did all of that as far as directing the race, the registration, the financing, the design work, the t-shirts, every other aspect of the event. That was my part. But USA OCR provided the technical official in the rules and the sanctioning part of it. They also showed up in great detail and just kicked butt at Hackett Pickup, helping with that, and helping keep things flowing with the band system, which I was not familiar with. So they provide those sanctioning rules. We provided the event basically, and they made sure that the rules were followed, the band system was followed, the penalty loop was correct, and those kind of things. That kind of thing.
So, in short, for those of you guys who are listening, Julie and Jason, Phoenix Race, did all the grunt work behind the scenes to make the event happen. And USA OCR waved the magic wand to approve it as an event where the top individuals get selected because they have partaken in an event that had certain rules that lead to the world championships next year in Sweden 2025. So that's kind of a very short, small perspective of the difference.
Yeah, I don't want to necessarily take away from what they did put into the event because I know that Russ specifically and Ian worked tirelessly worked hours and hours writing the 55-page rule book to follow World Obstacle. And the para group they had so much work going into the para side of things because there were no standards put forth. So they had to create the standards for the para athletes and to be able to host that. I mean, Aaliyah, just to see those folks cross the finish line, knowing that they have competed, not just participated, was worth every penny, honestly.
There are plenty of races out there that, like you just said, are only participation for those individuals. There isn't a competitor spotlight for them. There's no heat or event because their adaptations aren't presented or accounted for in the race. So it's really, really cool to see that what we are doing on a global level has finally come to this national level. I know like More Hearts and Scars really gets their people out as well as some other organizations, but this is different because it allows them to compete. And at Worlds, I've seen them and it's so impressive. You know, the individuals who are missing limbs, or maybe they're not blindfolded, or maybe they are blind and they're completing these obstacles that we do with 4 functioning limbs and visual aid.
Oh yeah, definitely 100%. And we had athletes in wheelchairs. We had a blind athlete, and some of these folks that I've known since they started racing. Um, one of my favorite adaptive athletes, Jenna, who her very first race was one of my races. Obviously, we are all inclusive, and we have an adaptive athlete services coordinator, Joey, with More Heart and Scars, who takes care of those athletes to make sure that everything is safe on course for them. But she joined obstacle course racing at a Phoenix race, and now she has earned herself a podium on a national level in para as a para athlete. So that just made my heart smile. Like, you can't I can't even put it into words how awesome that was, and just worth every bit of work that all of us put into it, whether it was the committee meetings biweekly or the para athletes writing, or the parent committee writing a gazillion rules, and and there are a gazillion rules in both sides, in able-bodied and para athletes. So it did take a group effort for sure to get all of that put together.
It sounds like that was a highlight for you, getting to see some of those para athletes complete the race. And actually, what you said, it was a relationship between the two of you, USA OCR and Russ. Russ is amazing. I don't know his actual role. He's like in the committee, but he's not really on the committee. He's always the communication person, and he does so much behind the scenes work. I don't think anybody knows how much work he does, but Russ is amazing at kind of bridging the gap between the committee and even like all the subcommittees. He's fantastic. And
He is. He's an amazing human, and he's amazing for the sport.
yes. And you had mentioned the para athletes, but is there another moment or couple highlights that stood out for you?
The women's finish on Sunday was pretty intense. We had three women at the end all together. One that only had one band, one that had two bands, and then the third only had one band. So it literally came down to like racing through penalty loops. And it was very intense to see how that was going to play out. And I actually streamed it live on my Facebook page because it was so intense. That was really cool to see. And it was awesome to get to meet all these athletes who otherwise may not travel to the East Coast to come to a Phoenix race. We're a smaller brand. We're not as large as Savage or Spartan, but we are a bigger brand compared to, one local race type situation. But we don't offer these huge amounts of prize money. So your typical elite athlete is not going to come in from California or Las Vegas or Minnesota or Montana to compete in a Phoenix race. And they did this past weekend. So that was really awesome to have that level of athleticism at one of our events.
I actually watched that, and it was fun to see because I know the course was spread out, so it was a little difficult to get more coverage. But obviously, you guys had it at some key places, and there were other people definitely videoing that. And I saw it, I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Because the woman who wasn't first, yep, she started her penalty loop, and she had to do two. And then Rachel Waters came up, she only had to do one. And it was exciting to watch. And I know from talking to some of the other athletes, specifically Vivian Tran, she was so excited to get through the Ninja Tech rig on Sunday for the 15K. So spoiler alert, Vivian got through it, but you've probably seen on social media that she did. Because on the 3K, I don't think any elite woman got through it. But on the 15K, one or two of them did, right?
That's correct. Yes. We had some age group girls get through it, but we didn't have any of the elite women get through it. And we actually had like a little meeting about, okay, we had no elite female complete this obstacle. Maybe we need to change it up for tomorrow. And Jason went and spoke to the top three females, and they were like, no, don't change it. This is a national championship. Don't change it. It's supposed to be hard. Let's go. And so he didn't change it, and it worked out very well. And I think people enjoyed the difficulty of it and the challenge of it. on the 15K, I think it had a little bit, even though we dried it off Saturday morning, I think it had a little more time to sit in the sun before everybody hit it. So there was a little less slippage going on. But it overall, yeah, that Warrior Tech rig was a band stiller.
That one definitely looked fun. I was kind of jelly of it. I was like, man, I want to go play on that sucker. I also heard that apparently a number of the men were struggling at the dig deep, which is the obstacle where you take the slam ball and hoist it over a higher level. That's not a bar, but it's kind of like a bar. You have to get over to the other side and then do it again.
Yeah, so that one is a surprising struggle. Um, we like to really combine balance, agility, grip strength, and brute strength. So that obstacle is a test of your brute strength. So you're looking at a 25-pound slam ball over an 11-foot bar twice. And the number of men that got stuck there, because it was a mandatory completion, you had to get that obstacle completed or you lost all of your bands. The number of men that were stuck there or lost their band there was very surprising. But we see that in the competitive heat in our typical season as well. Some of the more pro racers that come through or the higher level racers that come through will get stuck on that thing. And it is really about technique and brute strength, honestly.
Yeah, that one's a fun one. I've never had an issue there because, like, throw it, miss it once, okay, and then you get the hang of it. But the men's ball is higher, the men's ball is heavier, and the target's higher. So perhaps it does present some challenges when you're out of breath and coming in towards the end.
And it was at the end, it was second to last. So you're toast by then. And the obstacle right before that was Mount Pike. So you've toasted, you've gone through the Warrior Tech rig with your arms. Mount Pike, for those of you that don't know, is a vertical slip wall that is at a very steep incline, but you utilize pegs to vertically climb it. So you can put your feet on the wall, you can put your knees on the wall, but it's still taxing to the entire body, especially the core.
Yeah, that one's a unique one. You guys do a couple with the peg one, and the pegs are actually chained together, so you only have a limited range of motion to move vertically up. You can't just put the peg as high as your reach could go because they're attached, and it doesn't allow for that.
Exactly. Mr. Phi is a little diabolical. His obstacle design.
Now, seeing as Phoenix Race is a mandatory obstacle completion event, how did you feel, just your own personal opinion about the three-band system? Do you like it? You not like it?
At first I was like this, I don't like this, I don't like it at all. Just because we've always been band over burpees, we're a single band, 100% completion. This particular event had so many technical rigs that I'm not sure anybody came in with all three bands, to be quite honest with you. I mean, well, there some of the elite men did, but we would have had very few finishers if we had stuck with our Phoenix race rules. So I kind of lean towards the band system that they utilized for this type of competition because it lets athletes who it kind of evens the playing field. So for example, an athlete who is a very, very strong technical runner, it was going to do really good on this course because there was a lot of extremely technical running on that mountain. However, those who are extremely proficient at obstacles, but not so much at technical running, it evened the playing field a little bit for them because even if they failed that obstacle and they were fast, they still had the opportunity to make it up. So overall, I kind of liked it.
Okay, interesting. I'm on the other spectrum. It's not my favorite. I think it's a unique way to do it. And as a podcast I previously did with Vivian, she's like, oh, it's like another flavor. It's another way to do a race. And depending on what your preference is, you can pick your poison. Is it a race that does a 3-band system? Is it a race that does mandatory completion? Is it a penalty? So it does provide versatility and variety for the various athletes out there, which is cool.
And just to clarify too, like everything was mandatory completion other than the rigs. Those are the only things that you could get a band cut and move on. So if you couldn't make it over 777s, which you've done a million times, I'm sure, of ours, which 3 back-to-back 7-foot walls, if you couldn't make it over 777s, then you weren't moving on. So the majority of the obstacles were mandatory completion and had to be done. So balance, strength, all of that was required to be done and could be attempted more than once.
Yeah. Yeah. They can be done numerous times. And if for some reason you decided to stop, and you would lose all 3 bands and you don't even get a chance to recover a band with a penalty. Yeah.
Correct, correct. Yeah, you could lose 2 bands on rigs and make those up with penalty loops in order to finish and have all 3 bands. But in order to get a finisher time, you had to have all 3 bands.
And that's definitely more of the international races do that style, but there have been a couple here that have done that. I know Mythic Race had done that. I did that race. I don't even remember bands, but I know Asa, who did biking, he has done a couple races like that. So it does provide a unique style. Is there anything else that you'd like to say about the national championships or anybody or thing that you'd like to shout out?
Well, my husband was like 100% came in clutch from this event. Obviously,
I'm sorry, did you say your husband? Your husband, how many years has it been?
it has been 4 months,
Yep, they finally got married this year, but they've been together for a while.
8 years. Yeah. He came in and just really was able to work with a crap situation, aka the hurricane, the damage, the down trees, the boulders on the access roads, and kill it with what he had to work with. And he was out there for weeks and weeks and weeks doing that. And then weeks and, another week of cleanup. We're still not done actually because we had our marathon last weekend. But, he made the world go round for me when it came to hosting this event. There's just so many shout outs. The race brands that participated were amazing. The friends that shot messages and said, "Hey, good luck, congratulations." Being being the first female race director of a national championship, or being the first para athlete national championship event. All of that was just so uplifting and so amazing. The only thing that I think I would like to see change, or I know I'd like to see change, and we learned from this event, is just better preparedness on me knowing the exact rules, that kind of thing. The technical officials were great. They knew the rules, but I needed to know every single rule to every single obstacle, and not knowing with the storms what obstacles were coming and what weren't. I didn't know every single rule to every single obstacle. And I like to be a well-oiled machine on race day. So that definitely needs to change. And our participation was low. And I think that the event coinciding with Croatia was one issue. Another was that it fell on the Jewish high holiday. And also, it's the fall. It's just freaking busy in the fall. People get married, people go to football games. The fall is a very busy time. And Spartan had a race the week before, both OCR WC, which is a high level event, and the Nashville race, which is less than 2 hours from where this event was held. So sometimes back to back race weekends are difficult for a lot of people. And I think that had a decline in our turnout versus what we were expecting. So definitely expecting a bigger turnout for next year as the event grows and the USA OCR as a federation grows and is more widely known for what they do for the sport and their end game goal for the sport as well.
Yeah, as things develop and grow, because it's okay if things start small. Usually in the beginning, there's always a little bit of chaos. It's if you can come out of that chaos and improve, that's where success kind of really lives. And you guys did so much work to make it happen under unforeseen circumstances. And I know all the athletes were super happy they could actually participate in a race. Because imagine if the hurricane came and you guys were like, oh, well, this is what happened. We can't do anything. And you guys put that extra time in to make it happen for them. And I know that they're super appreciative of that.
We are a no cancellation race. So as long as it is something we can pull out a miracle on, we'll do it. I mean, even the one I mentioned to you earlier, and I know we've talked about before, but yeah, we showed up to our Murder Creek Mud Run at 5:30 in the morning, and over half of that course was underwater. And instead of starting at 8 a.m., we started at 9:30 and rerouted the entire course. It was only a 5K, but rerouting an entire course and shutting down a major highway in order to get the racers over the floodwaters and to the other obstacles so they didn't miss, they missed two obstacles and that was it. But they were still able to race. And that was something that was completely unforeseen because that water came from up north. It didn't even rain there. We will do any and everything we can to overcome whatever obstacles we face in order to put our racers on obstacles, basically.
So
I'm one event woman.
that is true. She is. Don't cross her. Don't cross her. Well, maybe if you guys are listening, you'll check out the Phoenix race in the coming 2025. And who knows, maybe we will have another USA National Championship next year, which obviously we'll have to hold our breath and wait to find out if and when that's going to be. So thank you so much, Julie, for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
And thank you guys all for tuning in. Definitely like, share, subscribe, and of course, stay flexy.